Remembrance Day with a program of multicultural music. And this will be at Rice University. So if you'd like more information about that, please feel free to email me. I will share this information with everyone following the program today. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get started. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion leading up to Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is on January 27th. My name is Regina Vitolo, and I'm a librarian at Lone Star College-CyFair and a member of the Diversity Committee. The LSC-CyFair Diversity Committee and the LSC-CyFair Library are honored to bring you our guest speakers today. We have Rosalie Jerome, Claudia Kissinger, and Emmanuel Rund of the Holocaust Remembrance Association, which is located in Kingwood, Texas. For today's virtual program, we will be hearing from each of the panelists on topics of the origins of Holocaust Remembrance Association and Holocaust Remembrance Day, reconciliation, Auschwitz, and Holocaust survivors, and the memorialization of the 1.5 million children who died in the Holocaust. And then, of course, why the work of the Holocaust Remembrance Association is so important today. And then we'll spend the last 10 minutes of the program on Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box as they pop into your head, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Our speakers today, I'm going to go through and briefly introduce everyone and let them speak more about themselves. We have Rosalie Jerome here, who lives in Kingwood, Texas, and she is the president and executive director of the Holocaust Remembrance Association and the national director of the March of Remembrance, Texas. We also have Claudia Kissinger, who lives in New York, and she's leading the conversation on reconciliation efforts as a relative of former German Chancellor Kissinger and the relative of a Nazi and ardent Adolf Hitler follower. Emmanuel Rund lives in Israel, and he's an Academy Award nominated documentary filmmaker and producer, and he grew up as the son of German Jews in Israel. Rosalie, if you would please start the panel today and tell us more about your story and yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rosalie Jerome. I'm the founder and the president of the Holocaust Remembrance Association. And I'll just show you a quick, let's see, I'll share my screen to find it. Okay, I guess it'll be here. No, it's not it. Hold on. Hold on. It's trying to find my screen. All right, here we go. Hold on. There we go. Can you see that? Everybody can see. This is our organization, Holocaust Remembrance Association. And
real quick, Rosalie, I don't see anything quite yet. Regina, do you see anything?
Okay.
I didn't see anything.
I'm not seeing the screen share yet.
Can you see it now?
No.
Oh, there it goes.
There we go.
Okay.
Sensitizing hearts to the issues of the Holocaust. Yes, there you go.
Yes, and so that's what we are. We started it 3 years ago on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and what we do is we have a Holocaust Garden of Hope, where it's here in off of Lake Houston in Kingwood, Texas, put together and written by Dr. Susanna Kokanon, who wrote the exhibits, a Holocaust scholar and writer, who worked with Yad Vashem for 15 years. So she's the writer of our exhibits. So we'll have a grand opening on April 23rd. If you're nearby, please come to that, April 23rd. We also have an Upstander Stone project where we are, I know that CyFair is going to be doing that project where you can paint stones, and we're going to have 1.5 million children's names written on those stones for the garden. And we have different librarians helping us from Rice University and from Lone Star Kingwood. And you get a bag and you write the name, you get the list of names of the people, the children, where they were killed, and you write where they were killed on it. And that we give to you as a gift. It's 20 bags, 20 stones in a bag with paint and all that. So if you want information about that, that's our gift to you. So we have that project that's good for educating and sensitizing hearts to the issues of the Holocaust. And we also have the March of Remembrance that we're going to do on April 23rd, and we do that all over. And Claudia will be talking about the Marches of Remembrance. Excuse me, where is it? Getting out of Flickr. Anyway, I'm not that good at sharing here. Okay, there we go. March of Remembrance, Texas. So I'm the state director for the marches, where we work with Nazi descendants who are repentant for what they did, their families did during the war. And we have Holocaust survivors there and people flying in from Germany like Claudia and others, sharing their testimonies and their regret of what their families did. We also have veterans that join us. So this year will be in Kingwood, April 23rd, 2 to 5. That's the information. You could check our website at hra18.org if you're interested. And we also have scholarships for Lone Star. So I'll have to talk to Jennifer about that, Jennifer, afterwards to make sure we get it into CyFair. It's in Kingwood, but for those who come to the Marches of Remembrance, they can write about it and get a scholarship possibly. So that's kind of what I do. And why do I do it is because, let's stop share. I do it because my parents, it is International Holocaust Remembrance on Friday, and it's about the liberation of Auschwitz, and Emmanuel will talk a lot more about that than I will. But my parents, and I know he has family as well, were from Hungary, and most of their parents and all of their family were taken to Auschwitz in a day from Sopron, Hungary. And I have here, which you can't, I don't know how much you could see, but this is the rail report. It's actual documentation of the death trains in 1944, the castle list, and it shows the towns from Hungary and how many departed. And this is my family's town, Sopron. 3,077 Hungarian Jews were taken in a day. Their neighbors let everyone know who was Jewish in that town, and my family was all taken. So whenever I talk about the Holocaust, I like to remember one of my family members. So this is my parent, my father's parents. I'm named after her. She's Rosa. I'm Rosalie. She, thank God, was died just before the Nazis came and their collaborators came after the Jews at the end of the war in 1944. This is Ede Eisenstatter. This is my grandfather, and he was in his 60s. My husband's 70 in a few days. I used to think he was old. I'm 65. So that's how old he was. Him and the rest of the family were taken. This is all of my father's brothers and sisters, and I have many other pictures, but they were all taken and there was no room in the gas, after the gas chambers, to put the Hungarian Jews into the ovens. So they were burned in the pits. And when I went to Auschwitz for their anniversary recently, when I went as a tour of Auschwitz, and she said, she found out I was a second-gen descendant of Holocaust survivors. And she said to me, you need to go over there. She points to the forest, because this is where the Hungarian Jews were burned after the gas chambers. It's not a pretty picture, but it was in the pits. And that was towards the end. There were so many coming. So we're remembering Auschwitz. This is when Auschwitz was liberated. And so I felt I needed to give you a little perspective there about my family. And the only reason I'm here, I have grandkids and happy family and this goodness in my life, is because of Christians, my father's business friends, who hid him in their different homes as they were being hunted down in Budapest like animals to be shot into the Danube or taken on the trains. And these people risked their lives to hide my parents and save them, and also my one uncle, but everybody else was taken. So I just wanted to give you let you know I'm not a scholar on the Holocaust. It's just in my DNA to help. I get emotional because everything, by the way, this is a 501c3 that we have. Everything is nonprofit and a gift to the community. It's in my DNA to help raise up people, students that are watching today, teachers that are watching, whoever you are watching today, to raise you up to be sensitive, so that your heart would be sensitized to the issues of the Holocaust. Whenever you see stereotyping of any kind, prejudice, trivialization of the Holocaust, any of that, that you wouldn't be silent, you would speak up and do something. These people that hid my parents did something. They didn't just, oh, well, that's too bad that that's happening to the poor Jews. They did something about it. And the reason that I got so super involved is because I do video work, and I happened to meet the founder of the March of Life movement, which is these Nazi descendants who are doing public marches in over 300 cities. Claudia will talk about it. And it affected me so much that, of all people who are being public about the Holocaust, and you're Jewish, you eat the Holocaust, as a Jew, but non-Jews caring about the Holocaust, German people, non-Jews caring about the Holocaust, being public about it, doing repentance, hugging Holocaust survivors. No, it was unheard of. And I took my cameras to Germany to see what they were doing. It affected me tremendously. And just another thing, just to say, for everybody should know this, that there's a phenomena that the stress hormone of descendants of Holocaust survivors has been mutated. You could research this, where when people say, oh, the Holocaust, let's get over with it, let's move on. But the descendants of Holocaust survivors are still in our DNA. We still deal with anxiety issues. It's been passed down. And so I just wanted to let you know it's not over. And there's a tremendous rise of anti-Semitism, as we know, especially in Texas. So I don't want to talk any longer. You guys can ask questions later, and I'm assuming Claudia, I think, is next. Hopefully that was, Regina, that was okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Rosalie. Claudia, if you would like to unmute, you can go ahead and start.
Yes, so my name is Claudia Kiesinger. I'm from Germany, from Tübingen, Germany. It's a little quaint town in southern Germany next to Stuttgart. Maybe one or the other knows Stuttgart better. It's in the south, and I was born, I grew up there, and the whole March of Remembrance movement started there with one sentence that we were confronted with, like, the silence of your forefathers is still in you in regards to the Holocaust. And for us to really ask ourselves this question is really important, because change always starts with me. So it's really something that we were facing, and looking into the Holocaust, and seeing that many survivors, they cannot speak about the atrocities they went through, but we realized our own families didn't speak about what they really did. And also for me personally, I was very indifferent, I have to say that. I mean, of course, I heard about the Holocaust, because in Germany, you hear about the Holocaust every day. You have a couple of documentaries on TV, and in school, you have it multiple times, like, and but for me it was part of history. And the Germans back then in the 30s, they did it, and it was kind of distance, because also, of course, it was so horrific. You want to put, as a human being, you want to put a little bit of distance in between myself and what happened there. But what connected it back again was this simple fact that it was my grandfathers who participated in the Holocaust. And one of my grandfathers, Johannes Zug, he actually left the Catholic Church to become part of the Nazi Party in 1933. And so for him, he was the one who really, until the end of his life, talked about Hitler being the good guy who built the Autobahn and making jokes about the Jewish people. And that was how he lived. And but we in our family, we never spoke up against it. It was just, yeah, this is how Grandpa thinks. But what I learned in the course of this journey that we went on with this one sentence, the silence of your forefathers is still in you, that if I am silent to something, I approve it. And so me not standing up and raising my voice or saying, no, it's not my opinion, that what happened was horrific and he was not that good guy. I approved what my grandfather said. And that was something that started to really break my heart and make me realize and open my mind to go deeper and to see on the other hand, what did they really do? Because what we learned, we have all these family myths in our families, in my regard, of course, to the Holocaust, or nobody would talk about it. My other grandfather, he never talked before my father about the war and the Holocaust and what he saw. So it was all kind of hidden and nobody knew. And so we went on this journey to really start. We want to know, we want to face what happened. And in Germany, you can write to archives and find out. And like you can find out, like Rosalie found out many things about her own family. And we wrote to those archives. And then I found out that my grandfather, although it was said that he was never a member. So I had one who was a member of the Nazi Party. From the other one, they always said he never was in the party and he was arrested for it and he had trouble with it. But what did I get back from the archives? A copy of his Nazi Party membership card. So this whole thing, like you would like to see your grandfathers as those grandfathers that love you and are just what grandpas do, it really got changed over knowing what happened. And so one of them was in St. Petersburg. And I didn't know what happened in St. Petersburg, but if you, again, do your homework, in St. Petersburg, the German army besieged that city for almost 3 years, and just waiting for the people to starve to death. And of course, among them, a huge Jewish population. And when I read for the first time protocols about court cases afterwards, what really happened within St. Petersburg, it just broke my heart, because the starvation and so many just dying, laying on the ground, and all this just because Hitler wanted to save the buildings. Because of course, St. Petersburg was the summer residence of the Tsar, and it's a beautiful city, but that was his whole goal. They could have taken the city and done. No, they besieged it, and this is what happened, and the depth of what we have to look into. As you heard in the introduction, that my last name is Kiesinger, and there was a German chancellor in 1966 to 69 who was the chancellor, like the president of Germany during that time. And while I was still living in Germany and working, if I would say my name, people would say, oh, Kiesinger, are you related to the chancellor? And I would say, yes, kind of distant, because that was also what the family said, because he retired in my city, in Tübingen. And I didn't know him, and I was just would like put his like accreditation as being the Chancellor of Germany on my shoulders and say, yeah, you know. And then I learned what he really was during the Holocaust. So he was not a high-ranking general or soldier, but he was a high-ranking person in the administration in Berlin. He worked for Goebbels. He was responsible for the radio at that time. And the radio during the Holocaust was like the internet now. The Nazis sent out their horrific propaganda against the Jewish people in all the world. And this was the person that I would like to get involved with. He was responsible for that. He knew what was happening in the camps with the Jewish people. And I would like get advantage of just the name similarity. These are things that where I myself had to see and face and see, I cannot do this. And knowing that from that responsibility, I need to do something, because I cannot judge my grandfathers for what they did, and because I cannot tell you what I would have done. I mean, of course, I would like to say, oh, it would have been the good one. I don't know. But I'm living now, and I have a responsibility now to raise my voice, and that's why I'm doing it. So March of Life, March of Remembrance started in 2007, and since then we had in over 20 nations 400 marches of life who came from finding out about the death marches close to my city at the end of the Holocaust. When the Allied forces came closer to Germany, the Nazis wanted to hide the evidence. And so they emptied the concentration camps, and there was a smaller camp next to my city. And they walked the inmates, the people to Dachau concentration camp. And at that time, all of the people in the camps were already starved. They had no food, they had no clothes, they had nothing. And it was such a strong winter. And many people also call those death marches the second Holocaust, because many died additionally to all those who were murdered in the camps on those marches. So we walked this first march, and a Holocaust survivor, Rose Price, was on this march, and we walked along the routes of the death march, and what we also want to do is do it publicly. Like we have this event now, but also go out on the streets, because the Holocaust and everything that happened publicly. Many people in Germany said, oh, we didn't know, but it's not true. It happened publicly. So we go on the marches outside on the street and show and give Holocaust survivors the possibility to share their stories, because they need to be heard. Because so many say, oh, it didn't happen. It's not true. And Holocaust deniers, and who better can tell them you are a liar, because they survived it. And Rose Price, she was in 5 camps, and Dachau was for her the worst. And she has never been back to Dachau, to the others she had. And what she shared with us was that was like 2007. She said when she entered Dachau, all the smell, all the noise, all the sounds were back, and all the memory was back to her. In regards to what Rosalie before said, it's so long ago, why not move on? There are still people who suffer, and not only the survivors themselves, but also their families. So she walked in together with us, a couple of hundred people, and there was a possibility that a group of other descendants also could pray the Kaddish, and we have commemoration. But she totally broke down, and we were so concerned about her. And she later said that for her, something was coming to a close, because she cried for the first time. She was able to cry for the first time after the Holocaust. She couldn't cry when her husband died, when her son was taken away from her. This was the first moment, because God broke her heart in 6 million pieces and put it back together through what we did, in also expressing to her personally how sorry we are about what our families did to her family and to the Jewish people, and having a real person in front of her to hear these words that my grandfathers would have never said. And at one incident, she became such good friends with my mom, and so at one point she was there with my mom and we had coffee together, nice afternoon, and she suddenly turns around to me and says, "I'm glad you are my friend, because if it happens again, I will not be alone like I was before." And in that moment, I knew this is the decision that I make in standing with her, knowing that I would stand with her. If it happens again, if anti-Semitism as we see it is rising so much, but there needs to be people who raise their voices and do not just let it stay there, or for this, that there is peace, that don't confront everybody. No, I have to raise my voice because I have that responsibility from what my family did during the Holocaust. And that's why I'm involved with Rosalie. So from the beginning, when they started the marches in Houston, 10 years, we had 10 years last year, right? So I was there. I had the possibility to share. My parents shared actually the story at the first march. And I came back ever since and do this in other places because we need to speak about it. Silence is not an option, and only that brings forth the change that is so necessary. And yeah, maybe I'll leave it with this. Yeah, also to say, I mean, to emphasize it. I've met so many survivors, and for me, I had a dear friend here in New York. She passed away 2021. But when I read through a lot of things that she wrote after the Holocaust, such deep depression that she was in back then, and then knowing the relationship that we had, it was only possible through really speaking out and me really not hiding the past of my family, but being outward of it and seeing that it is possible to reconcile. I mean, what she went through, she lost all her family, her dear father in the camps, and she became kind of grandmother friend to me, and we had a deep relationship. And that's for me so precious, and that it is possible is really a miracle for me, but it's possible.
I'm showing this picture because even though she had a very tough life, a lot of these survivors became very successful. She's an artist. She was an artist. She'd do bright colors, right, Claudia? And
yes, absolutely.
Our art collection, we're going to do exhibits, but also just imagine. I just feel I need to say this, Regina, real quick, is that Claudia cleaned, a Nazi descendant, cleaned her house every week. A Holocaust survivor, right, for years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claudia, for sharing your story and your experiences and personal history with us. One of the things you brought up is the importance of remembering and talking about and facing the dark parts of our history, and it's so important to continue to do that. And the work that you're doing with the Holocaust Remembrance Association is so important, and we're so grateful to you for sharing these stories. I know Emmanuel here and joining us from Israel, one of the ways you help us remember these dark parts of our history, but also encourage reconciliation is through filmmaking. So if you could share with us your experience with your history and your story and what you do with filmmaking. Emmanuel, if you could unmute yourself, please. Let's see. I'm not able to. There you go.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you. There you go.
Yeah, my name is Emmanuel Rund, and I'm talking to you now from Jerusalem. I'm a historian, Jewish history, Israeli history, and I'm a film professor I taught at NYU, at Columbia, and School of Visual Arts in New York. And I made 240 films and television shows. And also I made 30 films about the Holocaust. And I worked in New York. And then I worked in Hollywood with friends. And we made films in Hollywood, just entertainment films. And it was in 1980 that I decided I came to this world for more meaningful things to do. So I left beautiful life in Hollywood and I came to New York City, Upper West Side, and I decided then from now on, I'm going to help survivors and make films about them. And so I went to all the synagogues on the Upper West Side in New York, and I met up to 600 survivors that I decided to help them to open up, because at that time, 35 years after the end of the war, they didn't tell yet their story, even not at home to their family members. And I helped them to start talking, and I filmed them and photographed them. And then I decided that after making close to 200 films and TV shows, from then on, 1980, I would make only films about the Holocaust. So I worked on 2 films with Professor Elie Wiesel, or Wiesel as some people call him, who was in Auschwitz and Buchenwald. He wrote 54 books about the Holocaust and about his experience. The first one was Nacht, very famous all over the world in every language. And so I made films with him, and I continued to help survivors in New York City. And then at some point, 1985, the town of my mother was born in northwestern Germany, in East Frisia, by the Dutch border and the North Sea, in a place called Aurich and Leer, East Friesland, Ostfriesland. She managed to escape just before the war, get out of Germany and to survive. And I was invited by her hometown. The hometown Leer invited all the Jews who used to live there to come and visit the town for 1 week. Many Jews didn't want to step again on German soil. And those who came, about 30, among them my mother and my uncle, came. And I made my first film in Germany. At that time, I didn't speak German yet. I studied it later on the job training by making films. But I made a great films, Leer bis wann, Leer until when. And the Goethe Institute, the German Cultural Center, sent me to the US and to Israel cultural centers to screen the film and lecture and ask and answer questions. Then I came back to New York, continued to help survivors. And then in 1988, towards the 9th of November, 1988, which was the 50th anniversary of the pogrom night called by the Nazis Kristallnacht, I took the family Auerbacher from Queens, New York to their hometown near Stuttgart in Germany, and started to make 3 films with them, 3 documentary films in their hometown called Göppingen by Stuttgart. I brought also other Jewish survivors who came to town for that event of the 50 years of the pogrom night. And it was a very strong evening ceremony with the mayor of town. And it was on next to the synagogue place, where the synagogue of town used to be until the neighbors destroyed it on 9th of November, 1938, when they destroyed 1,500 synagogues and Jewish schools, etc., and burned them. And so I took the family there, and I decided that my films the target audience should be German youngsters. And so I took 12 kids from the local high school and put them there to interview the eyewitnesses that I brought, the Jewish eyewitnesses, but also the German eyewitnesses. One of the German eyewitnesses that I found was the head of the Nazi party of that town. And so I kind of brought him to that panel in front of the students, and they asked questions. And he tried to lie, and it's very obvious in the film. And many young Germans who watched the films later on in Germany, all over the place, learned that the old Nazis lie. And if you talk to your grandfather or whoever, you have to be very well prepared to make sure that your grandfather or other Nazi doesn't lie to you. Then I took Inge Auerbacher. I took her to concentration camp Theresienstadt in Czechoslovakia, where she and her both parents were incarcerated in 1942 until liberation 1945. There were 3 years in that concentration camp, and luckily survived. And I was filming Inge in Theresienstadt, telling about the terrible situation. Lying there, there were no beds at the beginning. They were under the roof, and it was terrible hot during the summer, and Jews were dying all over the place because they didn't have enough water. There was no sanitation, no running water, hardly any food. And she was 7-year-old. It was very hard for her. And so I was filming her in her hometown. I also brought with us from Göppingen, Friederike, a 12-year-old girl from that town, because I made a second film. I made 3 films altogether with them. And second film was 2 women talk to each other as if Inge, she was 60 at the time, talking to an old girlfriend from her hometown, and that was Friederike. And I finished filming and the 3 films, and I came back to Munich, where I used to have my production company, and I cut the films, finished the films. And then I came across a German woman in Stuttgart who, during the Nazi time, served in that exactly concentration camp in Theresienstadt, and she was part of the Nazi SS headquarters in town. She was very close to the SS Dr. Seidel and Dr. Bauer, who were commanders of that concentration camp. And also, she was, whenever Adolf Eichmann came to organize deportations from Theresienstadt to Auschwitz to kill the Jews, she became his woman, his girlfriend. And so she knew a lot about what was going on in the camp. And so I managed to get her also to be interviewed in my film. And by the way, Adolf Eichmann, I saw him when I was 15 years old. I went to his trial, and I was sitting there and learning much about the Holocaust. And that was the beginning of my path of up to 50 years of working on keeping the memory alive of the Holocaust. And then my film, it was 1990, my film was invited to be nominated to the Oscars in Los Angeles. I went there and I had to screen my film in Los Angeles in 3 movie theaters. These are the rules of the Academy Awards, that the members can watch the films. And so I started in the first movie theater that actually belonged to Jews from Germany who came 100 years earlier to Los Angeles. And when the film started, the movie hall was full up to, there were no more sitting places. And when the film started, everybody started crying. There were lots of Jewish survivors in the crowd. And it was 1990, relatively early with films about the Holocaust. And at the end of the film, I answered questions. And then I stood by the door of the movie theater and greeted everybody who was there when they left the movie theater. Some of those people fell on my shoulders, crying and saying, Emmanuel, thank you for speaking for us. You know that we cannot talk about it. It hurts so much. And some of them gave me their business cards and asked me, please, Emmanuel, give me a call if you have time for lunch or dinner, that would be better. I called each one of them. I couldn't refuse anybody and leave him or her without calling them. And then there was one lady, her name was Leah Adler, and she gave me her card and asked me to visit her in her kosher restaurant in Los Angeles called Milky Way. And I came to visit her, and she told me her family came from Odessa in the Ukraine or Russia at the time, and they didn't have direct relatives in the Holocaust. And then she told me, my son Stevie, he makes films. And I told her, Mrs. Adler, I used to work in Hollywood, so I know many of the producers, directors, actors, actresses, but I don't know any Steven Adler. And she said, no, my son is Steven Spielberg. And I almost fell off the chair because she was relatively very short and thin. And I thought, wow, from this lady came this genius to the world. And then I asked her, Leah, we say in Yiddish, you have so much nachas, you have so much good time from your son, Steven Spielberg. Wherever he puts his fingers, is so successful, is gold. But I ask her, why didn't he make a Jewish film? It will be also very successful. And Leah told me, you know, Emmanuel, I know he read scripts about the Holocaust and books, but he made his other successful films. And then she was poking me in the chest, and she said, Emmanuel, I am meeting Stevie this afternoon, and I'm giving him an ultimatum. You have to make a Jewish film. Sure enough, he made the Schindler's List. And when he got the Oscar, he thanked the producer, Mr. Lustig, and other, and then he pointed to his mother in the crowd and said, here is my mother. She was my charm for this film. And I said, hallelujah, I made it. I made the connection. And I met Steven Spielberg a number of times. We went once together to Berlin to speak to high school kids in Berlin who come from like Middle Eastern countries. And I met him also in film festivals or sometimes in a synagogue. And yeah, now I made altogether 30 films about the Holocaust. And I decided, and then I screened them all over Germany in movie theaters, in universities, in church communities. And then often came to me after the screening or after the Q&A, came to me young Germans, like 17-year-old or 25, and they came to me and said, Mr. Rand, I have a big problem. I don't know exactly where my grandfather was in the Nazi time. I assume that he was a Nazi, but it doesn't tell anything there. That's why I suspect him. Or sometimes he tells me stories that I know they are lies. And every time I see a film in a movie theater or in TV, I see a film about Auschwitz, I keep looking there to see if I see my grandfather. Or every time there are, you know, stories or whatever, and that makes me crazy. And I realize that in Germany, there must have been millions of such, maybe Claudia would know about it, millions of young Germans who suffer because of their Nazi grandparents, and nobody helps them. There are no psychological help. I decided I'm going to help them. And I'm going to introduce them to Jews, but not in Germany, because Jews in Germany are very much afraid of the environment and they don't want to deal with young Germans. And so I decided to take them to Israel to meet the Jews of their hometown, where I made my first film in Leer. And so I took a group of them to Israel. I didn't want to put on them any Holocaust, just to make them hug survivors, okay, and then meet Jews of their hometown. I organized a party of those Jews who escaped that town, or those who survived the camps. And then I organized their children, the second generation, and their grandchildren, the third generation. And I organized a party in Jerusalem across from Mount Zion. And then the Israelis invited the young Germans to Tel Aviv, to their kibbutz, religious or secular. And we went all over the country, and I made 6 films with these young Germans. And they came to Israel, like falling down, very depressed because of life in Germany vis-a-vis their grandparents. And after a few days in Israel, they were cheering up. And when they came back to Germany, they came strong. And when I screened these films all over Germany, these 6 films, those possibly millions of young Germans watched the films, and some of them decided to heal themselves the same way that I helped the young German group. So following my films, thousands of young Germans flocked to Israel to do the same thing what they saw in my film. Now, again, I didn't want to put Holocaust on these young, beautiful kids, and just love and meetings and encounters. And then they were dancing in Jerusalem. I was filming them. That was in 1994. They were dancing. I filmed them dancing with Israelis, Israeli folk dances. Then they came to me and say, Manuel, we know that you Jews have tomorrow Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Memorial Day that is in Israel since 1953. And they told me, could you make sure, help us to be there in Yad Vashem, to be part, to watch that ceremony? And then I thanked God and said, thank you very much. I wanted them so much to be in Yad Vashem, but I didn't want to ask them. And here they asked for themselves. So the next day we went all to Yad Vashem. I brought my mother with me because she's a German speaker, and so that they shouldn't be alone, because I knew it would be very hard for them to be at the Jewish Holocaust Memorial Day, Yom HaShoah, with hundreds of survivors. And then at the end of the event, after 2 hours, I was still filming with a camera on my shoulders. I filmed the survivors all over the place over there. And then the group came to me, and one of the young German women, Karen, she was running towards me. And as she came closer, I just put the camera into her, and the soundman put the microphone. And I asked her in German, Karen, willst du etwas sagen? Karen, do you want to say something? And she answered, shouting so loud that all the 300 survivors all over the place heard her shouting in German, saying, I'm ashamed that in my country, in Germany, where we are responsible for the Holocaust, we don't have a memorial day to remember the victims, the Jewish victims, the way you do. And then this was, for me, the point where for years, I wanted to give Germany Memorial Day to the Holocaust, and only at that point, I saw this is the opportunity. So I went back to Germany with a group, and with the 6 films that I filmed, I went back to Munich, to my production company, and I started to cut the films. Now in Germany, when I was there making films, I was approached by the Central Committee of Jews in Germany, and they asked me to serve as a rabbi and cantor in Jewish communities because they didn't have enough people. I told them, listen, I work on films from Sunday till Friday. Then I rest on Saturday and then on Jewish holidays. And they said to me, okay, Emmanuel, you will rest on Saturday, but you'll do it this time in Jewish Community Center of Saarbrücken on the French border. And you should be there at 4 o'clock because you'll start singing the services at 6 o'clock for Kabbalat Shabbat. I couldn't say no. From then on, I served as a rabbi cantor in 15 communities in Germany every Sabbath and Jewish holiday. And then came the Russian Jews without any Judaism. And I taught them Judaism. And then, so I worked full time. And then in Germany, in America, I used to serve on the Christian Jewish Relations Board. And we used to go to church communities and, have friendly projects together and meetings. And then in Germany, they have the same organization, the Gesellschaft für christliche jüdische Zusammenarbeit, the Christian Jewish Relations Board. And they begged me to be part of their board. And I said, I cannot. I make films all week on Saturdays and holidays. I'm in the synagogues, but then they recruited me. I couldn't say no again. And this way I was able to be in this position. I was invited by this organization, like sometimes twice or 3 times a week, to events of the VIPs of Germany. The chancellors would be there, the president of Germany, the president of the Bundestag, of the German parliament, and people from the church and from education, top people. And when after coming from Israel and going to those events, I came to many of those people, and I told them, listen, I was filming in Israel young Germans from your country here, and they're ashamed, I said, sometimes with their pointed fingers. I said, they're ashamed that in your country here in Germany, you don't have a memorial day to remember the Shoah, the Holocaust. And I added also, and to remember also the other victims of the Nazis. And so it was middle of 1994 until the end of 1995, I met about 250 of those top Germans and begged them to help me set up a memorial day for the Holocaust and the victims of the Nazis in Germany. On the 3rd of January, 1996, I get a call from the office of German President Roman Herzog, and that he is accepting my initiative, and he proclaimed January 27th, 1996, as the first Holocaust Memorial Day and Memorial Day for the victims of the Nazis. And from then on, I was invited always when I was in Germany, I was invited to the Bundestag, the German parliament, every 27th of January to be a guest of honor, to sit in a gallery next to the chancellor and the presidents. And I said, hallelujah, I made it. And then the day that I initiated was adopted by most of European countries and some other countries around the world. So my day became the 27th of January in many, many countries. And then Israeli ambassador Dan Gillerman, who saw and knew about thousands of events from 1996 till 2004, there were thousands of events on the 27th of January, and he knew about it. So he was at the UN, so he went to Kofi Annan, the General Secretary of the UN, and begged him to have a Memorial Day at the UN for the whole world. And after sitting at the UN, there was a sitting, and they decided, because of most of the ambassadors to the UN came from those countries, Italy, Greece, Bulgaria, wherever, and since they knew already about my day from their own country, 27th January, they voted for that International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And then whenever I was in New York, I was invited by the UN to the event on the 27th of January. And last time that I was there was about 3 years ago. And I was invited to the UN on that day, together with Inge Auerbacher, who was the protagonist in my 3 films, that one of them entered the Oscars. Now, many good Christian churches and organizations in Germany, after the establishing of the January 27th, they started their own initiatives of the January 27th, and they did also many events, and then started also the March of Living in Germany in many towns, and also Jobs Binting, that I guess Claudia knows him. He started in Tübingen the organization, and whenever in Germany I was invited also by many towns to join them on their marches, March of Living, from the whatever concentration camp to the next synagogue, whatever. And I put my talit on me, the Gebetschal, the, that we were praying. And I told the people, my friends, the Christians, I told them, I want to thank you very much, because in Germany, I cannot go with a head skull cap, with a kippah on the streets of Germany. It's too dangerous. But when I walk in marching with you, hundreds of friends, I'm not afraid. So I thank you for helping me. And yeah, and so then I'm going to make a film about how I brought this day to become the International Memorial Day. And I'm going to make a film about my grandparents in Berlin who were killed in the Holocaust. And after Max Emanuel Rund in Berlin and his brothers, they, in the 1920s, they organized soup kitchen to feed the hungry Germans. But then as a result, so to say, the things were that the Gestapo SS killed him in 1936 when they wanted him to sign over his empire of buildings and factories. And I made already one film with the story of my mother's father, who was Rabbi Joseph Wolfs in Leer, Ostfriesland, and he was the leading of the community. When the neighbors started to burn the synagogue in 1938, the 9th of November, they wanted to burn my grandparents too, but they managed to escape from a window of the synagogue. But then 1940, they were taken to Berlin. In 1942, my grandparents were taken to Riga and shot there in the pits, like hundreds of thousands of Jews. And so I made a film about that part, but I'll make a film about my family in Berlin who contribute so much to the German people and to Berlin, and yet were killed by the Nazis. And yeah, and then I'll finish with that because I could talk for 8 hours. I lecture a lot these days, especially around my day, 27th of January. I lecture like sometimes 3 times a day in Jerusalem or in Haifa or Tel Aviv or Kibbutzim or through via Zoom in Hebrew, English, or German. I lecture, but I do it all over the world and during the year. So if anybody who would like of the viewers to ask me to lecture, you could just get the information here, and I'm prepared as a film producer. And right, yeah. And
thank you so much, Emmanuel. I'll share this information with all of our attendees today.
Oh, okay.
Make sure they have your email. Thank you so much for sharing your family history and your story, and for all the important work that you do in the other panelists, Claudia and Rosalie. And I want to echo what Jennifer said in the comments. Thank you so much, all of you, for all of your efforts and for helping to memorialize the horrific events that that happened during the Holocaust. And as we move forward to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again, I do want to make sure that we have time for a few questions. I know we are over time right now, but Josh, if you'll go ahead and share any questions we may have in the chat.
Yeah, we got a few questions in here, and just let everybody know out there, if you have any specific questions you want to ask of our panelists, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to accept those later on. Because we can certainly add that to the diversity page, so we can have that open to the public and we can get those responses out there. I do want to selfishly take the mic and say that it is inspiring to see how the arts really help, especially with the painting that Rosalie shared in healing, but also specifically Mr. Emanuel's line of work that he does. That it gives a voice to a community that would otherwise not be heard, and it also makes connections from everybody from those communities that maybe they won't feel alone. So just want to put that out there as a fine arts coordinator. I do want to share that. So the first question that I got today is, we're seeing, and this is very important, I think, Rose, I'll direct this to Rosalie first. We are seeing many Texas legislative bills filed this session censoring educators on many historically sensitive topics. Your thoughts, what are your recommendations on how to block book bans, censorship, and this is interesting, removal of DEI offices in colleges, libraries, and universities? I know that's a mouthful.
Well, I'm not an educator in that world, but I don't like book banning, that's for sure. I mean, people may not know, I don't have the time to just show this, but you could take a look at giant bonfires that the Nazis did of choosing which books. It's unbelievable. If you go to the Holocaust Museum Houston, you could see these giant images of wonderful authors and books being burned because it didn't line up with what they thought needed to be, that the world would, their people would be, their minds would be ruined by it. And any kind of censorship like that is a little scary for me. I don't know if that's an answer, or as far as how to handle that. I have Jimmy on the line. I know she's watching. She's my librarian activist. She helps us. I know she's watching the Zoom. She would be a better person to answer that, but I don't think you have our viewers answer. But hopefully, it does bring me back, and it's shocking. It brings me back to what happened pre-World War II. What we have to notice, what's happening today, a lot of the phenomena is pre-World War II stuff. So because as a descendant of survivors, I can smell it more easily, and I'm very sensitive to it.
Thank you for that. Claudia, Emmanuel?
Well, I work with a number of people. I know many friends who work since years on the G-12 books in America, the textbooks, and many issues were removed from those books. Like much of the Shoah was removed, and instead people put genocide in Biafra or Rwanda and many other kind of censorship. There are many problems, and I work with different people, and we try to correct it. And we don't want to come to the point like the Nazis on the 10th of May, 1933, burned all the Jewish books in Germany. And these were university students in Germany who went to the libraries and took all the Jewish books and burned them. So we hope we don't get to it in America, but we have to stand and watch.
And I do have to say, to stand up for our state of Texas, there's only, I think, 15 states in all of our country that must teach the Holocaust. And ours is one of them. Right. And so I think that's something we could be proud of.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. Let's see. The second one I have real quick is it's maybe a somewhat easy question to answer, but do you think social media has perpetuated anti-Semitism?
And how? Yes, and how? Because it's so popular and people know how to use it. And you could be a kid already and do stupid things on social media and terrible things. And not only in anti-Semitism, but anti-Semitism is climbing terribly all over the place, much in Europe too. But we have to stand guard to avoid it and to reduce it at least. And but we need politicians. We need also people in America to write to their elected officials and hang and bang them with their letters to try to do something about it. And yeah.
I think what also is important to point out is the trivialization of the Holocaust that you see, especially on social media. I mean, it is so common to, oh, this is how like the Holocaust was. It is so terrible for me to hear that, people saying that I break my leg, or was like the Holocaust. That's stupid. It is not even stupid. It's the trivialization of something that happened like the Holocaust, where there was so much hatred against one group of people and wanting to just kill them all. As a German, I can't stand it. I can't hear it. It's really important to stand up against those trivial sentences that you think, do they even know what the Holocaust was? So it's so important to not let that just go and answer and correct it.
Also with Keenan West or whatever, what does he have, over 10 million Twitter fans or whatever? That's more than the 6 million Jews. I mean, he says one comment and it provokes those who have been hiding and quiet thinking those things. Oh, he says it, I'm gonna now say it. So it is a little scary, and I'm glad to see all of the people that came up against him and Adidas and all them who stopped promoting, representing him. So we could look at the perpetrators, which is always a few. The perpetrators are always a few, right? How many did it take to shut down America in 9/11, right? Just a few. I mean, so there's always going to be hatred. There's always going to be those kind of people. You can't really get rid of them. I remember Marty Fine told me that once, the Texas Holocaust Genocide Commissioner, descendant of Holocaust survivors. He said there's always going to be those people. But what we have to work on is what you guys are doing. We have to work on the bystanders, the silent majority, the good people out there that will actually, when there is something being said or done that's not appropriate, that's prejudice or stereotype or unjust against any group of people, that they will not be silent, be a bystander. And if you see in this diagram, this is how we teach the Holocaust at the Holocaust Museum. I learned this, that the bystander is equivalent to a perpetrator. And then you have the rescuers and then the target in the center. So I remember Linda, I forgot her name. I forgot her name, Lipstadt, who's I think
Deborah Lipstadt.
Famous movie and a story about her. And she says that you want to be, if you're at a dinner party or at a party with your friends or whatever, and there's somebody talking about Jews or Blacks or anybody, okay, any group, and putting them in a box, you have to be the kind of person that person at the host of the party will never invite back, because you're going to open your mouth and say something about it. It's genocide starts with words. It really, and what is the words? The Bible says that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So that's why our organization is focusing on sensitizing hearts to the issues of the Holocaust. Joshua, you're going to see with our organization, we use the arts and theater and music to deal with the emotions of people. We have a lot of amazing Holocaust museums here in Houston and all over California, Washington, Yad Vashem, that give all the facts. What we're doing with Holocaust Remembrance Association is dealing with sensitizing the hearts of people, having you take a look in the mirror. Where's your thoughts about, what's your personal prejudice about anybody or anything? How are you doing? And will you speak out against injustice? That's what we do with the association.
A common theme I see with a lot of these presentations is that you got to get used to being uncomfortable, especially if we want to be advocates, if we want to be allies. You have to be willing to, ask the questions that may make you uncomfortable, or make the statements that make you uncomfortable. So I'm glad you said that. That does get echoed a lot. I'm going to ask one more question, if that's okay. And I apologize to the person asking. I'm actually going to have to condense it just a little bit. Very interesting question. So many knew the Holocaust was wrong, but hate was so great and fear was fertilizer for hate. How, besides education, do you overcome the brain's propensity for hate and tribalism? And this is kind of talks about what you just said a little bit, Rosaline.
I was just focusing on somebody saying, what was it? Who was it? Michael Bolton. He said, it's now good news we could use. 20 states of our 50 are now require Holocaust education. 4 was added in 2021. That's good news. So I spaced out with your question, your talk.
That's okay. Yeah, so many knew the Holocaust was wrong and hate was so great and fear was fertilizer for the hate. How, besides education, do you overcome the brain's propensity for hate and tribalism? Emmanuel?
Yeah. Well, you have to go out and you have to approach the other side and to be friends with them, hopefully, you know, getting to know them getting to know you. If people don't know you, they hate you and they're afraid of you and they'll do you harm. And I had the chance in America to be at Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee, one of the 2 Black medical colleges, Afro-Americans. By the way, I was commissioned to produce 50 films to educate all medical professors in America, all medical doctors, and all students all over America in improving bedside manner, and then making films on social justice and films on inclusion and all kind of things. And I was in the middle of the Black Medical College, and of course I made friends over there. I used to have fish and chips with Oprah in Nashville when she was CBS affiliate of there. But anyhow, and we had a delegation that we had a Jewish delegation meeting an Afro-American delegation at Fisk University in Nashville every once in a while to discuss everything that's going on in America. If there were riots in Crown Heights or whatever, we discussed it. And from there on, it went to the politicians and to the Senate and Congress. And you have to go out of your way, not just to stick in the corner someplace. You have to go out and approach other people and show yourself, expose yourself, so to say, and teach them, learn from them.
I will say, I'd like to say one thing to that. You know, in my neighborhood, I have a lot more Muslim people moving in. And they kind of hide, but they come out at night taking walks. Sorry, I kind of live in a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant WASP neighborhood. And so I've been noticing that. And I was noticing, like, my first reaction, just to answer this, Joshua, about tribal or group mindset, I noticed that I was afraid. I'm going to be honest with you. I was a little bit like, okay, what's happening? And I was, you know, and so, but I realized that what helped me was, this is a woman. Like, I saw a woman walking with her garb on. This is a woman. She has woman problems. I have woman problems. She has stuff with her kids. I do. She has problems with her spouse. I do. I had to look at her as a human being, not some stereotype thing. And that helped me.
That's great. Thank you all both for so much for both of that. And then I do want to echo a lot of what people are saying is thank you for sharing your stories and personal experiences. This has been a really enlightening experience. And I want to hand this over to Jennifer Jenkins, and if I can, or Virginia, did you have any other questions before we head out?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone that, for attending today, and our panelists for all the work you do raising awareness about the Holocaust and its survivors, and for establishing International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And thank you to Dr. Valerie Jones from College-CyFair, Sarah Zapata, Josh, you for helping us with coordinate everything, and to Kelly and everyone who helped promote this program. Thank you.
Just want to say a quick thank you, and to echo what Regina said, thank you so much to our guest speakers today. Ignorance can really breed hate and discrimination and violence, and we have to keep remembering so it's not forgotten, because we see the uptick in anti-Semitic events and crimes today, and so it's an a very unfortunate reminder that history can repeat itself. So thank you all for your contributions. Thank you all to the attendees for your support. Really appreciate it.
Yes, again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to our participants, and the recording will be available online for anybody who missed it. Have a wonderful day. Bless you all for all the work that you do. Really, truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank you for having us.